And what I do is I provide coaching to leaders. And I have a framework, the bag we carry, to unpack your belief systems, your assumptions, and guardians, which are the protective patterns that show up in your behaviors. And you can reach me at rtplearning.com. And it's just pleasure to be here and see how I can provide some stories through my insights and maybe inspire just one person at a time.
Thank you. The pleasure is all mine because I know from coach to coach, person to person, man to man, we all need assistance one way or another because the life can be difficult for so many
Yeah.
across the world. So, when it comes to assisting people with their traumatic experiences and helping them work through, why did you get involved in this type of work?
Well, I suppose it started with sharing my story, kind of my origin, kind of where I came from and how I landed at this work. And I was a child of an alcoholic parent. I grew up with an alcoholic household. My father is alcoholic, and he still is an alcoholic. And not many people think about trauma or post-traumatic growth in terms of living a life as a child and as an adult, young adult in that household in terms of traumatic. People usually think about trauma in terms of military veterans, that kind of thing as an event. But there is a lot of work that is being done with adult children of alcoholics. So I am an adult child of an alcoholic. And I grew up in survival mode. I grew up vigilant, always looking behind my shoulders. I never knew if I was going to get the loving, caring father one day or if I was going to get the violent alcoholic who turned our house upside down. So you can only imagine day by day, drip by drip, this is the impact of growing up with an alcoholic in the household and in your family and pretending, having your mom, for example, or others, pretend that everything's okay, knowing that you're um, growing up with fear, you're growing up uh, with not knowing if if when the shoe's gonna fall, as they say. I think one of the early beliefs I had growing up as a kid, as a child, and as a young adult or a teenager was that I had a lot of anger, and it was one of those words always in my mind. I was like, "F love," "F love." It was one of those where love doesn't last; it's temporary. So F love, and then I carried that belief system into young adulthood, and I never fell in love with a woman until my current wife. I got married in the past one time, and then I got divorced because I actually married my father. I married an alcoholic. She, party and numbing the pain. So I grew up in that type of environment, and I began to drink. I, started drinking as well to numb my own pain. I didn't know back then. I just thought life was one big party, right? I would party from Thursday through Sunday, just not wanting to be around the house, around my father because it was more fun to be around my peers and friends and hooking up, quote unquote, right? Kind of chasing the skirts and that kind of thing. But always, alcohol was always part of my culture, my background, and it was just a way of life. And I never thought I had a problem, and it only came to bear in 2021. So you can imagine I've been drinking since the age of 13 all the way to, I don't know, age 45 or whatever, somewhere around there. And in 2021, I had a health crisis. I had appendicitis turned sideways, uh, meaning that I was in and out of the hospital 2, 3 times, emergency room at least twice. I had three surgeries, three procedures, and I spent a lot of time in the hospital. And I spent about 3 months recovering. I had a PIC line inserted, and I lost all kinds of weight. And that was one of the darkest moments of my life, and pretty traumatic experience. And I have two lovely children, But I can tell you this, that Christmas Day, when it first happened to me, quote unquote, to me, I'm going to use that phrase for now, I was crying. I saw my kids from the hospital window in their little rain boots. It was raining, and we were just waving hello to me. And that night I cried. That was the first time I really just sat with the pain, and I wasn't trying to be no macho man, nothing like that. I was just like, I am so freaking done. I am so done. And I didn't know what that meant, but I did know for the 3 months I was in recovery and going through these procedures that for the longest time in my life, I always thought of myself as life is not fair. Why me? I'm the victim. Why did this happen to me? Why did you know, is it my fault that my dad drank? Why is this? It was, me about trying to make sense out of that. And then one day, I don't know if it was in the hospital bed or at home in bed with the PIC line, I just had these thoughts that, you know, I'm just sick and tired that there has to be more to life. And I had a moment of clarity and a wake up moment where I looked back and I said, you know what? There has to be something's going on here. There's an angle. What is the good Lord trying to tell me? What am I trying to learn from this? And then it was after I began to go deeper into learning more about myself that I discovered that I changed one word from it happened to me, and that word was for. And I said it out loud. It happened for me to give meaning to the experience, to give meaning to my past, and stop letting, self pity and a victim mentality drive my current. And then I just went all in on positive psychology. I quit drinking. I've been sober since 2021 because, thank you, because I understood that the first reframe that I teach my clients is being able to reframe a story, a narrative that no longer is true or driving you in a positive way. And for me, the narrative I held on for the most of my life was one of a child who was helpless, victim of alcoholism or an alcoholic, right? So then it just made super clear sense to me that I have to quit drinking. That's the lesson. That's the reframe. And now I can tell you, when I tell many people this next phrase, they look at me like I'm crazy. Perhaps I am, but I'm happy. I can tell you this. I am so grateful that I grew up with an alcoholic. I am so grateful that I went through my health crisis because now I can look at life experiences and be able to choose the story I want to tell myself, not the story of a victim, but give meaning and what the lesson is so I can move forward and grow as an individual. And that, my friend, was my turning point and how I landed at the work I am currently doing.
When you say that you're glad that that happened for you,
Yes.
elaborate on that because some people may be confused to thinking, oh my God, is he happy he went through the traumatic
Yeah.
experience? But
Yeah.
you're speaking from a different perspective. So elaborate on that so people are clear when you mean that you're glad it happened for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm never going to argue with anybody that the experience when you're going through it at that time, that it's not it's a freaking painful experience, right? It sucks, man. It's not beautiful. It really messes with you. And sure, that's not necessarily what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is now that it happened, I can look back and extract the lessons of and the understanding of what this experience means to me because it's what I do after what matters most. And let me share the parable of the two arrows to help highlight this. It's a Buddhist parable. So there's a man walking in the forest and he is minding his own business. And then he is struck with an arrow. Boom, it hits him. That is pain. That happened. That is real. that is happening to that person. He is bleeding. That's pain. Now, when he pulls that arrow out and he starts to heal physically and whatnot, he can either dawn on that experience and he can suffer all his life because it happened to him, versus if it happened for him, he can choose to not let the second arrow self-inflict on him. So the first arrow is pain, the second arrow is suffering, and what that means is I get to choose not to suffer. I didn't choose the first arrow, right? I didn't. I'm not saying that I'm thankful for that arrow, that actual pain that I got, that it happened on the uh, to me, as a child or whatever it is. But now looking back, my choice is the second arrow. I get to choose to look at this with gratitude because it's going to make me stronger and it's not going to allow me to choose suffering over well being.
I think that's an excellent way to look at it because you have a choice to what happens after
Mm-hmm.
the traumatic experience. Is that hard for people to grasp, understand, and accept?
Well, yes, it is very. That's a great question. That's a lot of the resistance, a lot of the why people say I'm crazy sometimes. Like, are you crazy? You're saying that this experience didn't happen, or I can be grateful for this experience. How can you say that, right? It is a very difficult concept to grasp, but the way I help explain it is that we as humans we defined ourselves very linear, looking at time, Newtonian time, that there's a beginning, middle, and end, right? That our past is moving, our past is behind us, our present is more of the past, and of guess what? In the future, there's gonna be more of our present, right? So we are conditioned and reinforced in our society and in our culture to always think linear. So once we start to interrupt or challenge that concept of time, look at it more relative, like Einstein time, or more holistically, it gives you the power to interpret the past. It gives you the power to look at, wait a second, I have the power today to start thinking differently about my past and what it means for me today. And guess what? In the present, I have the power today to think and imagine a more beautiful future because I'm not driven by my past. I know I'm talking a little bit, these high level concepts, but I think the lesson here is it's difficult because, and it means that you're not broken. You're a beautiful person, just like the rest of humanity is. We are just living with a very popular understanding of time and where we fit in that. And it's very difficult if you grew up and you're surrounded by television, music, and media, that the most of the world is operating in a very linear fashion. It's very easy to start identifying in that way. So the challenge is one of identity, and it's hard, right? Like how can I begin to um, explore these concepts without perhaps somebody being offended by what I have to say because it's attacking their identity. They say, "Well, wait a second, Raul. You're saying that I've been thinking about my past and what my past means. You've been saying that I've been doing this all wrong." And I mean, the short answer is like yes, but it's not just you; it's all of us. And I think this is why it's so challenging to start thinking about you having the choice to look at your past holistically and extracting the meaning and the lesson so this way you can apply it here in the present and start healing or growing into a beautiful person.
And let's be Even, you know what? I'm going to take it there, Raul, because you're making me take it there,
I
okay?
love it. Let's go.
Let's be very honest. For a lot of people, their parents are on what I call the God throne.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what type of abuse that they do, emotionally, physically, spiritually, financially, we're still going to view them one way. And they're going to say that, Terrain, Raul, are you saying that this was done for me to a benefit? Yes, if you want to see it that way, you can definitely look at it as a benefit. What do you mean, Terrain? Well, here's why. Your parents, let's use something that isn't physical harm for the most part.
Hmm.
Your parents gave you conditional love. You had to go to school, get straight A's to get validation. You had to be gold medalist in sports to get attention. You went into the world as an adult. What do you think you're going to do? You're going to go to the women out there. You're going to try to get conditional love by
Hmm.
performing. Here, I'll buy you this. I'll take you here. I'll do that. The women will do what for the men? I'll have sex with you here. I'll do sex with you on the first night. Whatever the case is, right? It's a
Hmm. Hmm.
cycle
Hmm.
repeating. Now, the beautiful thing that comes out of that, if you choose it and if you work hard enough, you will begin to realize there's more to life than that. And when you find the person that's going to love you the way you want it to be loved, show you the validation and the attention that you always wanted from a healthy perspective, then you're going to realize, I don't want this anymore
Hmm.
because my eyes are open. I can understand this. I want that. Is that the goal, or not is, should that be the goal for people to understand that you can take your trauma and turn it into your superpower and go out and not only save yourself, but save others as well?
That's a great analogy and example. You and I suppose there might not be a right or wrong answer, right? Because not everybody's ready or open to moving and growing what we call post traumatic growth. But I certainly do believe that um, going back to the parable of the two arrows, that unconsciously and even behaviorally, because we've been acculturated, we've been led to believe by our parents that suffering is part of life, right? So even when your mom or your father or whatever the situation is, whether it's for example, say your father was a hard worker and he always worked, 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 and he retired at 75 years old, for example, right? So you might not necessarily recognize that your father's trying to teach you hard work ethic, but as a child, you're growing up with that um, understanding, and then you're also performing in that way. So you don't even know how to rest. You don't even know how to stay still because now you are becoming your father, right? You are working. You are looking and judging others who are lazy because they don't work 80 hours a week like you do, right? Like a successful person does. So what's beautiful about post traumatic growth is you use the trauma experience, right? In my experience, growing up with an alcoholic, and even the physical and emotional trauma of of, of my health crisis, and that was my wake up point. There is that I had a choice. It you either have the perspective, you either stay with the same perspective of, oh wow, I can't wait to heal better, to get better, so I can go out there and start drinking again, and have my same life. You know what I mean? Or or you could lie to yourself, right? Say, oh, I'm gonna quit, or I'm gonna be great, but inside you're itching because you want to drink again, right? Or you can be honest with yourself, because I've heard that I think it's Alcoholic Anonymous. One of the slogans is all progress starts with telling the truth. So you have to be able to be face yourself in the mirror and be truth to yourself, and decide what is the kind of life that I truly want, so I can attract the kind of partner that I really want, right? Um, If you're unable to make that choice for yourself, then you're just living what we call in a default future. You're just living linear. What happened yesterday, if you have no ambition or no goals or no internal thoughts of what you want to accomplish or achieve or what you want to change about yourself, then your past fits very perfectly to your present because it's the same comfort of what the past is. And guess what? Tomorrow is going to be more of the same. It's comfortable. Don't mess with my identity. That's why it's so hard for people to transform, like radically transform and choose and go all in on choosing the life they want and designing the life they want. Because nobody wants to go to the dark place. Nobody wants to go back to the traumatic event. And I hear this a lot. Raul, you're asking me to go there? He goes, well, I'm just saying what would happen if you go there with a different lens. You don't have to do anything. You can continue to live your life and let your past drive your present and let your present drive your future. And that's what we call the default future. It's the default. It's already written. You're going to continue to move in a linear line, or you can disrupt that line by making a conscious effort and saying, okay, wait a second. This idea about choice. I have a choice to look at what's been holding me back and what can I do to get unstuck and maybe begin the process of healing or growing or even dreaming about a more beautiful future.
The traumatic past becomes like a rocking chair. It's just something to do, but you don't go anywhere.
Oh, I love it. I totally love it. I love it. Um, One of the frameworks that I use, I love that analogy, rocking chair. One of the frameworks that or my big overarching framework is the bag we carry. So imagine you have this big old weight, this bag, and bag stands for B is for the beliefs that you hold in the bag. A, the assumptions that hold those beliefs to be true in your bag. And then G is the guardians, which is the protective patterns that show up as behaviors. And those that can be the inner voice, people pleasing, um, perfectionism, whatever it is, right? So what I teach people now is that we do carry this bag, and it comes from a lifetime of whether it's trauma, challenges, whatever it is, growing up with your parents, you're learning from them, and you're stuffing that bag with these beliefs, assumptions, and guardians, and it's defining who you are. But guess what? It is very, very heavy. It it only your transformation or your step to a positive growth or positive healing only becomes possible when you start to empty out that bag and you start to transform those old belief systems, assumptions, and guardians, and then start acknowledging them. And then you reassemble your bag into a jetpack. And you strap on your jetpack and you rise towards a more beautiful self. So you're absolutely right. It's what we do with that rocking chair or that bag that matters the most because we're all carrying it there. We're all sitting there. Now, either you rise or you stay sitting, and it becomes normal. Again, to your point of people are afraid of change because it's comfortable. You're 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 basically saying that you want me to get out of my behind, out of this comfortable rocking chair, and now look at that rocking chair, get up, look at it, and figure out what it is, and reassemble it and make sense out of it. And you're wanting me to walk away from that, Raul. I cannot go there. I hear that a lot. It the work we do is not easy, but it's beautiful because once you realize you're on a chair and you can transform that chair into a rocket ship, then you're just rocking your way and you're getting some more speed and you're gonna propel yourself forward. But it hurts, right? Who wants to go there? It's so comfortable, it becomes part of your identity, right? It becomes one of those where I can say that I'm committed to change and being a better person, but if I'm still on that rocking chair, guess what? I'm committed to sitting on that rocking chair because all of us could say we're committed to growth or getting or healing or whatever it may be, and those are just words. But our actions and the results of what we do is proof of your commitments. And your commitments and your actions are so tied to your identity that it's so difficult for people to start imagining a new, beautiful, healed, awesome person in the future because it's that's even scary because you're so used to that rocking chair. I love the analogy. You're so used to just being in that it's part of who you are. And to start unpacking and reframing what that means to you, it's pretty scary. I and the example is this too. I had to say goodbye to a lot of friends who were my drinking partners. That's scary. We're social creatures, and so we want to belong and we want approval from our peers. So I had to start surrounding myself with like minded people in order to start living in a new imagined identity, not one that was defined by alcoholism and having a party every single day and binge drinking and lying to my wife, hey, did you drink today or whatever it is, or she would never say that, but she was like, hey, did you have an opportunity to, go do this thing that we were going to do because it's going to helpful, and said, oh, I didn't have time to do it, lying to her that, well, I was having a couple of beers and I didn't want to drive, right? And I made up an excuse. So I wasn't living authentically. And I think a lot of us have that potential in us to create and imagine the kind of person we want to be. But like I said, it's not easy, but it does start with pausing and and I tell people that once you're able to mentally make that shift, that this traumatic experience didn't happen to you, it happens for you, a light bulb moment happens to many folks. Some people are still, again, it's not easy. People are like, nope, I don't want to go there. But many people are like, holy smokes, I've been having this old narrative driving me in the present.
I shared with someone that the healing journey is a long one, not an easy one for many people, as well as it's a lonely one. And she asked me, what do I mean? Told her, well, our brain is a beautiful thing, our body's a beautiful thing as well. But for many of us, our mind body gets used to certain things, certain behaviors, especially from friends. So if you're someone that was maybe a little bit reckless or indulged in sex, money, and drugs, and it was causing you harm, if you start your healing journey and you start to move away from that, you may lose people.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, Terrain, I don't know what I'm going to do. I can't give up the lifestyle. I was like, well, then you have to make a choice. Is the lifestyle more valuable to you than a new version of you? Or we could put it a different way. Which one hurts more? You not being who you want to be or who you are capable of being? Or you maintaining this other person that's not who you want to be? That's what got her buy-in because she knew the pain that she was enduring. But this new thing, the only thing that she was feeling pain from was the unknown, was the fear of trying. You mentioned bag, you mentioned the beliefs, the assumptions, and the guardians. How can someone identify those three things in their life so they can start their healing journey and become the person that they want to be?
Yeah, great question. I think this is why the framework is something that I like to teach because um, part of your healing process will it's going to take many tools and insights and journaling, reflection. It's going to take some work, right? And it's a three-part process. My three R's. So the first R is reframe, the second one is reset, and then reclaim. Reframe is this: a belief system. You reframe a belief system, a toxic relationship, a person, a situation, a traumatic event, whatever it is, right? So the first step is to be able to be open, knowing that you can reframe an experience in the present or reframe an experience in the past, whatever the situation is. When you actually start looking at it happened for me to make sense and give meaning to this, that's the very first step. Because we all have a worldview. We all come in with a lens and a frame of how we look at our situations, our life, our relationships, our past. And we talked about this a little bit, Terrain, early on, where that frame is determined by your upbringing, your culture, your mom and dad, and all of that stuff. So the first big step is understanding that you do have a perspective, and then making a conscious choice to start to reframe the traumatic event, for example. So you reframe it. That's the number one. Number two is what I call reset. And that's really all about choosing to say, this is Raul 2.0. I am resetting my boundaries. I am resetting my floor. I am resetting my standards. And the important part here is this: you elevate that reset as high as you want it, your floor, your standards, because there's a lot of things that are happening in your life and in your mind that you keep telling yourself that are not healthy. And that's below that line. That's below your floor. And you have to be able to set that line strong and not fall under that. So, for example, if the lifestyle is taking you away, further away from your goals of becoming a more grounded, beautiful, healed person, then you're committed to living below that reset, below that line. You're living still, you're lying to yourself, right? So that's the second step. It's again, it's not, as you know, it's not easy. I'm very much a student of this as I am a practitioner and a coach. So reframe the situation, toxic relationships, trauma event. Reset so you know what you say yes to, but most importantly, what you say no to. And I can tell you this right now: the reset is the most difficult part for people, because people have to choose whether they are living above the line or below the line. And they have to be super honest with themselves. So they have to be willing to start saying no to many of the toxic relationships, for example, or situations, or even thought processes. And once you start saying yes to the small amount of new belief systems, new relationships that make up the higher standards, that's when your life starts to dramatically change. You're making that choice. That line is the choice. That's the line in the sand that you would draw, for example. And when you do that, those are the first two steps. The third step is, when you do that, you are reclaiming your voice, who you truly are becoming. And you're going all in, and that in of that version of a more beautiful person. And that's the big goal. The results you're willing to fight for. The results that you want to concentrate your efforts in. So if and this happens simultaneously. Probably step 1, 2, and 3 is not the best conceptualization, but the very first thing that I see that is helpful for people is imagining a more vivid future for themselves, and then being able to reframe their experiences, the trauma experiences, for example, and then being able to say, okay, where am I going to reset in my life? And then how is that going to help me reclaim the beautiful person I know I am already in the future? And you start moving in that direction. So that's the um, the three process framework that allows you to start unpacking your bag.
When someone is looking to use that in their family setting, they've had difficulty from their childhood with their parents, or even let's say in other relationships, such as a romantic relationships, because
Mm-hmm,
they went from the family dynamic, they're trying to heal that and make sure it doesn't show up in their romantic relationships.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
What role, if any, do you think shame and guilt plays in someone's progress?
Yeah, that's beautiful, right? You know, those are those feelings of shame and guilt. They're tied to the old stories, the belief systems you grew up with, and they live in the bag, right? The feeling, for example, let's look at guilt. A lot of us, right? If you want to start healing or become a high achiever, and you're becoming a better version of yourself, what I hear a lot of people say is like, I'm feeling guilty because I'm leaving a lot of my friendships, old high school friendships behind. And we process that's real. But what helps them understand that it's perfectly normal and that it's the way to a better version of yourself is again having that standard, having that line, and and having they have to name it, right? I can't do it for them. The work belongs to them. They have to create a list of what lives below that line. Where does that reset? How far high is your reset? So many people do name, for example, staying connected with high school friends as something they need to let go of, or people pleasing is a really big one that I see below the line, and feeling guilty because I'm not there, quote unquote, suffering with them. I left my boys behind from the neighborhood, whatever it is, right? You're telling yourself these stories. So when people start to name all of these beliefs and ideas or concepts and situations, they have consciously chosen that those belief systems or those stories fall below the line. And once they're able to see it and say, using the example that you shared earlier, the pain of of staying stuck and not and choosing the lifestyle and not doing anything about it is greater than the pain of just staying stuck in that lifestyle and being a people pleaser. So they see those items below the line in their reset, and it's kind of like a weight. They're like, wow, I really do have the power to choose. Because even the story you tell yourself that the people are going to get hurt because you're no longer, or I'm going to feel guilty because I'm letting go of those bad relationships. That's a story you tell yourself to stay safe and live below that line because it's been part of your identity for so long. The moment you move above the line, that old story is no longer driving you because you're free, right? And it's the parable of the two arrows I shared earlier, where you get to choose to stop suffering and start living above the line.
The moment when someone decides, I don't want to suffer anymore, and they begin living, is that scary because is that a scary transition for them to come face to face with because they may leave people behind and maybe for some people they begin to doubt their own worth to find different, healthier people.
Yeah, no, absolutely, yes. But the reaction I do get is one of freedom, one of liberty. Like I am free to choose happiness over people pleasing, and and yes, it's difficult. I think the point I want to drive, we've been kind of talking about it already a little bit here, is in our conversation that we're we're social creatures, right? Social beings. We want to belong. We want to be part of the cool kids, right? The group, the drinking buddies, or the lifestyle, whatever it is. Um, all of what we're talking about here really is about our own identity. So when you're taking somebody as a coach, if you're taking somebody towards a new journey and helping them along the way to fashion a new identity for themselves, that is scary because you're almost challenging them to look inward. Or no, you are challenging them to look inward and to start shedding some of those old stories that for the longest time have made a part of your identity, and it's hurt. You're asking me to strip away my soul. You're asking me to say no more to my drinking partners and buddies and the lifestyle, but that's all I know, Terrain. You're asking me to give all that up. And then as the coach, you're like, I'm just having you consider what direction you want to go. You already know that tomorrow's going to be the same, more of the same, because it's too difficult for you, or tomorrow can be something a little bit different. It is scary because it's unknown, but is it worth for you? Right? We're trying to help people evaluate which where do they want to go. And I think you made a good you part of what you're also talking about, Train, here is this is why self-help books and workshops and coaches are so valuable. I remember being coached by Dr. Benjamin Hardy in one of his challenges as a group. And this is where I went all in on positive psychology and I started to apply a lot of these frameworks and they started to work for me. It's an accelerator. You're not doing it alone. You're there with somebody who has their best interest in you. You're there with your coach. You're there with somebody who's done it before. And I think that's the beautiful part of what you were, kind of what you talked about. And the broader question is, yes, my friends, it's this work is not easy. Making that transition, making the choice, stripping away your identity and being vulnerable, that hurts. That's not cool. You know what I mean? But at the same time, having somebody by your side or having being able to surround yourself with a community or a new group of friends who are on the same journey, things start to change. Things starts to feel more comfortable. It's pretty much you start to surround yourself with like-minded folk, and you don't have to be able, for in my example, you don't have to be able to get drunk out of your face to have a good time.
I speak about identity a lot because I think it's very important
Mm-hmm.
to people. And I tell people when someone asks me, Terrain, Raul, are you saying that for the last 10 years, what I was doing is wrong? No, I'm not saying it's wrong. I'll just reframe it and ask you the question. The last 10 years, how has it served you
Mm-hmm.
to become the person you want to be? And then that's where people will say, oh, you're right. The drinking, the womanizing, the using of men, the pursuit of money to my poor health, it hasn't helped me to become the person I am. So if that is the case, ladies and gentlemen, the question that I sometimes will ask people is, who do you want to be? What are you going to do to get there? But most importantly, how important is it to you?
Mm-hmm.
And then people answer, and then ask me why to answer. Because sometimes we can treat it like the gym. It's December 31st. My New Year's resolution is to be a better man. Once it comes Valentine's Day, 6 weeks later, oh, I'm off with that, right? And then I go back to my bad habits of eating, partying, and sitting on my sofa like my last name is Bundy, first name is Peggy. So we all have to figure out, do you want to eat bonbons of emotional chaos and distress? Or do you want to lead the life that you want to lead? Because, and this is where I feel bad for some people, and Raul will get your input. Every single person has the power to become who they want to become because we're powerful people. It's inside us. But self-doubt, self-sabotage, limiting beliefs in your bag, as you mentioned, prevents so many people from achieving it. If someone is in a relationship
Hmm.
with someone who's trying to heal their past childhood trauma and they're an adult now, what advice can you give them to navigate their relationship with someone who's struggling with past trauma and maybe they don't know how to handle it?
So are you talking about like somebody? So the partner of the person who's actually healing. So the person they're trying to support as a partner. They're trying to support that person who is healing. Is that right?
Absolutely, absolutely, because we can't fix them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
they're trying to support them.
yeah. That's that. Well, that's really good. I think one of the best ways to be is um, come at it as support, no matter what. Emotional support, trust, and safety, where you are not going to judge them. It's very easy as humans, right? We get to we do a bad, we say we're relationship driven, but we're sometimes we're pretty bad at it, right? We're horrible. So your partner is looking for the unconditional love, the support, the safe environment, and the nurturing and encouragement and the belief that they can actually change. Um, I've seen in relationships that sometimes that's too much for the person who is supporting, and those relationships end, unfortunately. But I also seen it where it strengthens the relationship because the partner is being empathetic and supportive and helping, um, in many cases, the man helping the man navigate the past trauma where it's alcoholism is involved or drugs or that kind of thing, and then the man is able to be like, wow, I'm with my partner who is super supportive and she is willing to, of course, stay with me, but more importantly, hold my hand and affirm that she has my back.
I love that because we all, you mentioned we're social creatures. We all need that support, whether it's a coach, whether it's someone that's filled with love. My own journey, when I first started it, I had to get rid of so many people because once your lens
Mm-hmm.
has been adjusted and changed, your whole perspective follows. And then I began to realize, like, wow, Terrain, were you really hanging out with these people? Right, Raul? Like you begin to realize, and
Yep.
it's like, oh my goodness, where did the last 10 years of my life go? Where did the last 15 years of my life go? But you needed that experience because it's shaping you to be the person that you are today. What advice would you give to someone who is maybe a little bit hard on themselves because of their past experiences and they just want to maybe use it for fuel or just not be as hard on themselves because of what they went through?
Well, the advice I would give you is this: brother or sister, you're not broken. You're just human. And believe it or not, once you begin to understand that self doubt, the inner critic, lives in your bag and it's part of your psychology, and you're able to name it and say, you know what? maybe perfectionism or people pleasing or the inner critic served me at some point in my life. It kept me safe. But it's now as an adult, it's keeping me stuck. So realizing that you're not broken is probably the best advice I can give you, because once you're able to look at yourself and your own situation and say, we all carry this weight in one shape, one way or the other. Some of us are able to mask it better than others. And some of us are better at pretending that we're okay, but we're really not. And then some of us in our inner circles or in our social lifestyles, we want to belong and we don't want to look inside that self-doubt bag, for example. That's that's guess what? Welcome to humanity. You're not broken.
Raul, let me ask you one final question before I let you go. This question, sir, I'm going to give you three wishes, and you can wish for three things that you want people to know about this question. What are three things you wish people knew about life after trauma, and why?
Oh, three wishes. Life after trauma. It's at the core of my belief system now that the trauma happened for you. So it's the choice part, right? I'm not downplaying that the events of the trauma um, was was not painful, at that time. But now reflecting back, that happened for you to make sense. That's number one. Number two, if you don't reframe what that trauma means, you're going to repeat the same old story. And number three would probably be something like, your future self is counting on you of letting go of that old